Hello and welcome to another episode of VAT Update from Tax Essentials for Advisors. I'm Ed Thompson. In this episode, we'll look at 4 key developments from the last couple of weeks. So first, a consultation on the zero rating of land for social housing, which could simplify a VAT headache in developments. Second, we'll look at another consultation, which is on HMRC's plans to potentially extend online marketplace VAT liability rules. Third, we'll look at a case from the Court of Appeal where the Court of Appeal has overturned an earlier decision on private hire and the tour operators margin scheme. And finally, our tax tip is going to take a practical look at golden brick planning and why it matters on real projects. So let's get into it. So historically, VAT planning around selling land that's going to be developed for social housing has actually been quite complicated and can get quite messy. And people tend to use a form of planning known as golden brick. The government now wants to simplify things. A new consultation proposes a zero rate of sales of land which are intended for social housing, which would remove the need for some of this golden brick structuring. And the consultation that has been published is open till the 18th of August. We'll come back to golden brick planning though in our tax tip shortly. But that's not the only consultation that we've seen over the last couple of weeks. So let's now turn to another new HMRC consultation on VAT for online marketplace sales. So it's been known for a while that there's an issue here with tax evasion, essentially, especially where it comes to overseas sellers who are selling goods that are already located in the UK at the point of sale, but not declaring VAT on that. To tackle that, HMRC or the UK already created this legal fiction where the overseas seller is treated as making a zero rated sale to the online marketplace, and the online marketplace, like your Amazons of this world, accounts for VAT on the sale to the consumer, basically shifting the risk from these hard to police overseas sellers to the large platforms. But now HMRC is looking at going further, and they've released this consultation. So that's not just being lost from overseas traders, it's also being lost from some UK traders as well. So HMRC is thinking about extending these marketplace rules to UK sellers. But the challenge is this: many small UK traders are actually legitimately below the VAT registration threshold. So when they come to designing this reform, it needs to avoid dragging those kind of compliant smaller business into unnecessary obligations as far as is possible. And the consultation, which is open until the 18th of August, asks what would be the best way to do this and presents 2 possible ways that they might look at doing this. If these rules are extended, it could be a major shift for a lot of platforms that haven't actually been heavily affected by these online marketplaces so far, which could include things like food aggregator sites. Let's now talk about a big VAT development in the private hire world and a £1 billion problem facing Bolt and other private hire providers. So Bolt provides on-demand private hire services, and since 2022, it's been treated as the principal supplying those rides. Historically, Bolt argued that its model fell within the tour operators margin scheme, meaning that was only due on the margin and not the full fare. Now, the first tier tribunal agreed with that, the upper tribunal agreed with that, but the Court of Appeal has now overturned all of that. The court suggests that the tour operators margin scheme, or the TOMS, is much narrower than those earlier decisions suggested, and Bolt doesn't fit. So the result is that Bolt would need to account for that on the full price paid for the customer and not just the margin. So this mainly matters for historic periods because new rules came into effect from January 2026, which mean that private hire companies definitely aren't within the scope of the TOMS. But the historic exposure is huge on this, and at stake is over £1 billion for companies like Bolt and Uber. As usual, let's close off with a tax tip then. And I thought it would be apt, given that we were discussing the consultation for social housing, to talk about golden brick planning. So if a developer sells land before reaching this so-called golden brick stage above foundations, the VAT position can be painful. They might make an exempt sale of land, but that means that the developer suffers some irrecoverable input tax, or they might opt to tax and make a standard rated sale, but that can leave the purchaser with irrecoverable VAT instead. And that's why developers often push to build to the golden brick level, where the dwelling is above foundation level but not complete. And at that point, usually you can make a sale of partly completed dwellings, and that sale can be zero rated, which protects the VAT recovery position for both the developer and the customer in that supply chain. But getting to golden brick isn't free. It adds costs and requires careful monitoring of sites to ensure that the build is genuinely above foundation level. So it can be a difficult form of planning as well. And that's where this consultation that we talked about earlier comes in. That's all for this edition. I look forward to another update in a couple of weeks' time.
Thanks, Ed. Don't forget, if you missed it, you can now view our recent webinar with Ed on VAT planning via our YouTube channel. Just use the link shown here.